This is one of those questions that sounds almost too obvious to ask until you start digging into the specifics, and then it turns into one of the most genuinely fascinating rabbit holes in human history. Picture this: ancient Egypt, around 1550 BCE. A physician carefully grinds together dates, acacia, and honey to form a paste, which is then placed inside a small piece of linen and used as an early form of contraception. It's a remarkable glimpse into how humans have wrestled with family planning since antiquity. So, here's the real question. How did ancient people avoid pregnancy? And why do these methods appear so consistently across different cultures and eras? Let's actually dig into the first concept: barrier methods. Known in the scientific realm as proto-barrier contraception, this technique involved physical objects designed to prevent sperm from reaching the egg. Ancient Egyptians, for instance, used a mixture of crocodile dung and sour milk to form a barrier that was believed to change the pH and act as a spermicide. The specific use of crocodile dung sounds odd today, but back then it was thought to be effective due to the alkaline properties. In similar fashion, ancient Romans used animal bladders or intestines, akin to early versions of condoms, providing a physical barrier that was simple but ingenious. Now, this all sounds like proto-barriers were the go-to solution, but here's the kicker: these methods had variable success rates and were not universally adopted across time and place. In some cultures, like the ancient Greeks, such methods were scarce, and they relied more on less tangible means like prayers. This highlights how perceptions and approaches to contraception varied significantly, yet consistently aimed at controlling fertility. How did they think about timing and cycles, though? This brings us to the fascinating idea of cycle awareness, which is sometimes also called lunar phase calculation. Ancient societies like the Greeks had surprisingly accurate understandings of menstrual cycles, using the moon to track fertility. They noted that conception was less likely right after menstruation. Famed historical figures like Aristotle even wrote about avoiding intercourse during certain times to prevent pregnancy, emphasizing awareness of the fertile window. Meanwhile, women in ancient India relied on the nakshatra system, a lunar constellation method, to predict the most and least fertile days accurately. However, despite the apparent knowledge of these cycles, cultural beliefs sometimes muddled the science. For instance, some believed in abstaining from intercourse only during menstruation itself, which is actually one of the least fertile periods. This cultural interpretation sometimes overshadowed the effective scientific understanding, adding complexity to ancient fertility management. So, what about the herbs and potions? Next up, herbal contraceptives. Known technically as botanical anti-fertility agents, these were widely used in ancient times for their supposed contraceptive properties. The ancient Greeks and Romans used silphium, a highly prized plant believed to be effective, and reportedly harvested to extinction by the 1st century CE. The precise dosage of silphium was crucial. It was typically rationed as a small pea-sized portion daily to avoid pregnancy. Similarly, in ancient China, pennyroyal and other herbs were consumed for their abortifacient properties. Now, it sounds like herbs were a straightforward solution, but here's where it gets wild. The potency and effects of these herbs varied dramatically depending on regional growth conditions and individual physiology. This inconsistency meant that while some swore by herbal methods, others found them unreliable or even dangerous, leading to ongoing experimentation and adaptation. So, with all this complexity, why did ancient people keep relying on these practices? The final concept here is cultural ritual and belief, which is academically termed societal fertility frameworks. Throughout various civilizations, cultural and spiritual beliefs were deeply intertwined with contraceptive practices. For example, in ancient Mesopotamia, rituals and incantations were performed to prevent pregnancy, an approach that relied more on faith than on physical methods. In some Native American cultures, certain dances and prayers were believed to regulate fertility, showing that spiritual elements were as crucial as material methods. But here's where this gets even more interesting. In societies where these rituals were prevalent, they often provided a social framework that supported and validated individual reproductive choices, despite not being scientifically effective. This reliance highlights the importance of cultural context in shaping contraceptive methods, underscoring that these practices were about more than just preventing pregnancy. They were about aligning with societal values and beliefs. But how did it all loop back to the practical measures we use today? Back in ancient Egypt, as the physician applied that date and honey concoction, they were unknowingly laying the groundwork for a long lineage of contraceptive practices that would evolve over millennia. What started as a mixture of faith, observation, and experimentation has transformed into the scientifically backed methods we use in the modern era. It's a powerful reminder that the more things change, the more the fundamental human quest for agency and understanding remains the same.